What family were priests of the tribe of Dan from, and of whom were they a descendant? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Judges on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing Judges 18, verses 27 to 31. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Judges 18, verse 27. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Judges chapter 18, beginning at verse 27. So they took the things Micah had made, and the priest who had belonged to him, and went to Laish, to a people quiet and secure. And they struck them with the edge of the sword, and burned the city with fire. There was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no ties with anyone. It was in the valley that belongs to Beth-rehob. So they rebuilt the city, and dwelt there. And they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born of Israel. However, the name of the city formerly was Laish. Then the children of Dan set up for themselves the carved image, and Jonathan the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh, and his sons were priests to the tribe of Dan until the day of the captivity of the land. So they set up for themselves Micah's carved image, which he made all the time that the house of God was in Shiloh. Over the course of this chapter, we have been talking about the migration of some of the tribe of Dan from the south, where their tribal allotment was, to Laish in the far north of Israel. The reason for this migration is said to have been because they didn't have enough land on which to live, but that was only true because the Danites didn't expel all of the Amorites, who in turn didn't allow them to dwell in the valleys. Instead of dealing with the problem, migration was considered. Laish was selected because it was a settlement that would provide them with good land, being near the headwaters of the Jordan River at Mount Hermon, and the people there were thought to be easy to conquer because they were far enough away from the Sidonians for that people to come and assist the people of Laish when attacked. On the way to Laish, the people of Dan stopped and robbed Micah of his idols to Jehovah and the Levite who attended to them, intending to set up a shrine in the north, most likely to avoid having to travel to Shiloh to worship. Note, these idols were still to Jehovah at this time, but Jehovah didn't want to be worshipped by idols at all, so this was still sinful. Now Micah protested at first, but when faced with death, Micah retreated. Which brings us down to verse 27 and the capture of Laish. Just as the spies had surmised, Laish was rather easy to take, in that all were killed by the edge of the sword and the city was burnt down. The Danites obviously wanted to start fresh and weren't going to make the same mistakes that were made in the south, in that they let none of the locals live, so that trouble couldn't be stirred up. If only Israel had followed this plan in the land on the whole, then perhaps much of the period of Judges would have not been as bad. And because Laish was far enough away from its neighbors, nobody came to help, nor punish the people of Dan for their actions, leaving these Danites to settle here in peace. Having destroyed the city, a new city would need to be built, a city that they named Dan, after their ancestor, Dan the son of Jacob. And true to their plans, they set up the idols that they had stolen from Micah and set up a shrine for themselves there. Verse 30 reveals to us the identity of the Levite that had accompanied them, Jonathan the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh. It would be him and his sons who would serve as priests for the tribe of Dan. The question is, who is this Jonathan and from which family did he come from? Well, we know that he was a Levite, so if Manasseh was truly his father, it wouldn't be the Manasseh who was the son of Joseph. However, there is something interesting in the Hebrew that we need to consider. Instead of son of Manasseh, it reads son of Moses, but a little n is written above the line between the M and the S of Moses, Moshe. So it's so as to be read Manasseh. Now why would this be? It is suggested that the Hebrews did this in order to avoid saying that one of the descendants of the great lawgiver Moses became an idolater. Even though such would be tragic, we know that sons or even grandsons do not always follow in the righteous footsteps of those who came before. We're going to find that Samuel's sons were both wicked in spite of their righteous father, showing us that we're not saved or accepted by God based on our parents' faith, but rather on our own. That Moses was the ancestor of Jonathan makes sense because Exodus 2:22 tells us that Moses' oldest son was named Gershom. It is likely, however, that Jonathan here was not Moses' grandson, but could be his great-grandson or great-great-grandson, depending on where in the timeline you place this story. Verse 30 also tells us that Jonathan and his sons served as priests here until the days of the captivity of the land. Some assume this means the Assyrian captivity, meaning a captivity that was likely over 600 years away by this point. However, verse 31 tells us that the carved images of Micah were there all the time that the house of God was at Shiloh. Shiloh would be destroyed in the days of Eli around 1094 BC, and we never read of the tabernacle being there again after that time. So this would seem to set a lower time limit for these idols at least. And it would also shed some light on what verse 30 was talking about concerning the captivity of the land. For when the ark was taken by the Philistines in the days of Eli, Psalm 78 verses 60 and 61 refers to this as a captivity. So it is likely that is what's being talked about here. And after the period of the judges, this idol worship ceased for a time before being brought back in the days of Jeroboam. We cannot know for sure, but this is the likely conclusion. After this event, Dan would be most often used as a reference to Israel's most northern point, with Beersheba its most southern point. Thus, this story helps clarify this point for Bible students. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Judges chapter 19, verses 1 to 10, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.